Hi everybody. I'm going to show you how to do some cuts that you need to do for your sculpture project. When you're sculpting with paper, there's a lot of things that you can do to create different textures and to attach things so that they pop out and become sculptural instead of just shapes. So what I'm going to do today is show you how to do some cuts that you guys are going to need to know. The first one we're going to do together is a spiral. So what I do is I start off with a square. You can cut a square chunk of paper. It doesn't have to be totally perfect. It's a spiral, not like a circle. So if it's a little bit off, and it's okay. So it's just sort of circular. So to start it, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut around and cut the edges off. And watch my hands because I'm going to spin it as I'm cutting it. So that's the trick to making the spiral, is your paper is going to move just like the spiral is. So my scissors are going to go around. I'm paying attention to where the edges of the paper are because I don't want to go off of it. So, and now I'm getting back to where I started again. So what I'm going to do is, instead of cutting a circle, I'm going to cut inside a little bit so it starts to spiral around. So, and it looks almost like if you're making like a paper tornado. So you just keep going around and around and around until we get towards the middle. All right, I think that's a pretty good stopping point here. So you see it becomes sort of like a spring. Woo, woo, woo. Now, it's still got these edges on the side, so I'm going to trim those off. So I'm going to look to where it starts. It starts about here. So I'm going to cut. And it's going to trim those edges off. So I've got this little bit of scrap that I can maybe save for something else some other time. And I've got my spiral. See, it's like a slinky. So that's how to do a spiral. The next cut I want to show you is how to do a tab. So tabs are tricky. So basically, you have to think of it as a long line where there's squares, and the squares are staggered, kind of like a checkerboard, if you've ever seen a checkerboard or a chessboard before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one side of this paper first. So I'm going to be cutting along here, and then I'm going to flip it over and do the other side opposite. So going along, I'm going to start from the end, and I'm just going to cut a little bit, like about to right here, not all the way through it, but about halfway. So I'm cutting to about here on the paper. And I'm just going to snip that little rectangular piece off. And then I want to leave some space. So I'm imagining there's a rectangle here. I'm going to make a little snip. And I'm going to scoot down a little bit and make another snip. And then I just turn the paper and I cut that little square off. See, now I'm getting, it looks like one little rectangle on here. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to scoot down and I'm going to try to make sure it's even with the last one I did. So I'm going to make a little snip, make another little snip, and then I turn my paper and I cut between those two little cut marks that I just made. There we go. So I'm going to keep doing that the whole way down. So now I'm starting to get a pattern. Do you see the pattern? Almost looks like a little train or something on the tracks. So once I get to the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the paper over. And every time I see a square sticking up, I'm going to cut out a square underneath it. So let me move these little scraps so that you can see better. And what I'm going to do is underneath this, I'm going to make a snip and another snip. I'm going to be careful not to cut the paper too far so it doesn't fall off. And I'm going to turn it the same way I did before and cut out that little rectangle. Ta-da! So I'm going to scoot down. I'm going to do it again. Make a little snip. Make a little snip. And I just keep on going. So everywhere I see one sticking up, because of how I'm holding my paper, I just make a little cut and another little cut underneath it to cut out the shape below it. So it starts to become a pattern. See? There we go, and now I have a tab. So there's 2 different shapes so far. The next one's my favorite. The next one is fringe. And fringe is kind of like hair. So we're gonna make some hairy paper. And how you do that is you start from one end and we're gonna cut and we're just gonna snip, 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 snip the whole way down the paper, just moving our scissors a little bit as we go. So I'll try to scoot in a little so you can see a little better. Let me move these shapes out of the way. So as I go, I just snip and move my scissors. I'm using yellow paper right now, so it kind of looks like little French fries that I'm cutting. Can you see it? So all of my little cuts, I'm leaving the space so that the paper doesn't fall apart. And I just keep doing this the whole way down the paper. Once you get the hang of it, it's pretty fun to do. And it's a neat effect that you can do to add details to stuff. Like if you're sculpting with paper and making hair for something, or if you were making like a little hula girl and wanted to make her like a grass skirt, or a mustache for something, or eyelashes. So it's it's a fun cut. You can do a lot with it. So I'm gonna stop here for now. So, and I can take these, I can bend them around if I want to, and like kind of bend them and flip them up. So when it comes to attaching stuff with your glue, so we've got these paper shapes. How do we turn them into a sculpture? So when you start to attach stuff with your glue, we can do things where you put the glue on the ends and you can bend the paper to make it stand up in different ways. By doing that, you see how it makes sort of like an arch? Woo! Right? So we can do the same thing with the tab. We can make the tab do the same thing. If we put a little glue on the ends and sort of push in the middle, it starts to pop up really cool. And we can layer things together. So like I could have those there and maybe this goes underneath. And it starts to get really fun. So good luck. It takes a little practice to get the hang of it, but once you've got it, it's really fun.